We can go ahead.
Good morning. Namaste. We will start with the university song. May I request Dr. Arun Anand to kindly play the university song? धन्यवाद। आज जिनकी वर्चुअल उपस्थिति एवं जिनका आशीर्वाद हमें प्राप्त हुआ है, वैसे गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री सम्मानीय श्री विजय भाई रूपाणी जी, नेशनल बोर्ड ऑफ एक्रेडिटेशन के चेयरमैन श्रद्धेय प्रोफेसर के अग्रवाल जी, महाराजा सयाजीराव विश्वविद्यालय के वाइस चांसलर आदरणीय प्रोफेसर परिमल व्यास जी, सीनेट एवं सिंडिकेट मेंबर्स, डीन्स ऑफ फैकल्टीज, हेड ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट्स, all participants, my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this very important day and a very important webinar on the National Education Policy. There are so many facets of the National Education Policy. One of the important ones and which has become a part of our life is the process of accreditation. And I believe we have the very best person in this country to address that issue today. सर, मैं आपका स्वागत करता हूं महाराजा सयाजीराव विश्वविद्यालय की ओर से। हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी पे ये 8वां हमारा व्याख्यान है, 8वां कार्यक्रम है जो हमने आयोजित किया है। एंड वी हैव बीन एनलाइटेंड बाय मेनी prominent people, vice chancellors and other experts all over India, and it has been a very fruitful journey for us so far, and we are looking forward to your inputs also today. and we will certainly take them home and implement it, sir. That is a assurance from our side in advance. इस पूरी यात्रा में जिनका हमें, मैं कहूंगा, प्रेरणादायी सपोर्ट या प्रेरणादायी सहयोग जो रहा है, मोटिवेशन रहा है, वो है हमारे वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर परिमल व्यास साहब। आप फैकल्टीज ऑफ कॉमर्स एवं मैनेजमेंट स्टडीज में, दोनों में आप प्रोफेसर की भूमिका में है। नेशनल बोर्ड ऑफ एक्रेडिटेशन के भी आप एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल के सदस्य हैं एवं नैक पीयर टीम के कई बार आप चेयरमैन रह चुके हैं। मैं आपसे आग्रह करूंगा कि आप सहभागियों को संबोधित करें। प्रोफेसर परिमल व्यास।
नमस्कार, सुप्रभात आप सबको। मेरी बहुत सारी शुभकामनाएं। मैं मानता हूं कि मैं आप सबको पहुंच रहा हूं। Am I audible?
Yes sir, you are audible sir. You are audible.
Oh, so nice of you. So nice of you. आज विश्वविद्यालय के लिए बड़ा आनंद का विषय है, क्योंकि 2015 में जब ये जिम्मेदारी राज्य सरकार ने मुझे दी, तब हमारा विश्वविद्यालय का जो एक्रेडिटेशन है वो खत्म हो चुका था, उसकी अवधि, और विश्वविद्यालय को एक्रेडिटेशन के ले जाना वो सबसे बड़ी हमारी एक प्रायोरिटी थी। और पूरे विश्वविद्यालय के सहकार से मुझे बड़ी प्रसन्नता हो रही है। आप सबके साथ ये बात रखने का आनंद भी है कि विश्वविद्यालय 2016 दिसंबर में नेशनल असेसमेंट एंड एक्रेडिटेशन काउंसिल के द्वारा 3.16 ए ग्रेड से उसको एक्रेडिट किया गया। और उसके बाद 2015 से भारत के शिक्षण के जगत में एक बहुत बड़ा परिवर्तन की शुरुआत हुई। करीब 5 साल के बाद 29 जुलाई 2015 को हमें राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति, जिसको मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूं कि ये एक हमारी ब्लूप्रिंट है आत्मनिर्भर भारत के लिए, वो हमें प्राप्त हुई। अब उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए, उसको क्रियान्वित करने के लिए बहुत सारी बातें, बहुत सारी चर्चाएं हो रही है, और विश्वविद्यालय को बहुत सारा सहयोग इसमें प्राप्त हो रहा है। जब एक्रेडिटेशन की बात आती है, क्योंकि मैंने बहुत बार ये विषय रखा है हमारी परिवार के जो डीन्स है, हेड्स ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट से, परिवार के जो हमारे शिक्षकगण है उनके सामने, कि रैंकिंग और एक्रेडिटेशन ये दोनों एक ऐसी वास्तविकता है जिनके साथ हमको कदम मिला करके हम सबको आगे बढ़ना पड़ेगा। आजकल हम एक्रेडिटेशन की जो बात कर रहे हैं वो फैकल्टी, डिपार्टमेंट और यूनिवर्सिटी के विषय में अभी तो हम विश्वविद्यालय के तक पहुंचे, कॉलेज तक पहुंचे। आने वाले वक्त में, जैसा मेरी सोच है, मेरी समझ है कि एक शिक्षक को भी अपने आप को एक्रेडिट करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ऑटोनॉमी और अकाउंटेबिलिटी दोनों साथ में चलते हैं। और हम सब जानते हैं कि रूसा का अनुदान हो या और जब कोई भी अनुदान की बात आती है, फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस की बात आती है, तो उसमें एक्रेडिटेशन का और रैंकिंग का बड़ा महत्व है। कोई विद्यार्थी जब विश्वविद्यालय की पसंदगी करता है तो वो भी देखता है कि यह विश्वविद्यालय है वो एक्रेडिटेड है कि नहीं, उसका विविध रैंकिंग फ्रेमवर्क में ये विश्वविद्यालय कहाँ पर अभी खड़ा है। तो मैं मानता हूं कि ये कोई हरीफाई नहीं है। मेरे हिसाब से जो एक्रेडिटेशन और रैंकिंग ये एक ऐसी दो बातें हैं पूरे विश्व में चलती हैं, और मैं ऐसा मानता हूं कि मेरे हिसाब से एक्रेडिटेशन को मैं ज्यादा महत्व देता हूं, क्योंकि उसमें हमारे सब पहलू, सब हमारी प्रविधियां, उसको स्टैंडर्डाइज करना होता है, उसको प्रमाणित करना होता है। विश्वविद्यालय का एक एक व्यक्ति और उसके पूरे स्टेक होल्डर सब एक मिलकर के एक टीम बन करके विश्वविद्यालय को आगे ले जाने की कोशिश करे। ये बात एक्रेडिटेशन में हम ध्यान देते हैं। आउटकम बेस्ड एक्रेडिटेशन की ओर हम जा रहे हैं। तो मैं कुछ विचार जो हमारी राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति आई है, आप जानते हैं उसके 4 पार्ट है, और 4 पार्ट में सबसे ज्यादा जो चैप्टर्स, सबसे ज्यादा नंबर में जो चैप्टर्स आए वो है हायर एजुकेशन के बारे में, स्कूल एजुकेशन है, हायर एजुकेशन है, और इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की बात पार्ट 4 में की गई है। चैप्टर नंबर जो 20 है वो ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग द रेगुलेटरी सिस्टम ऑफ हायर एजुकेशन, उस विषय को लेकर के वो बात करते हैं। आई विल टेक दिस अपॉर्चुनिटी टू शेयर सम ऑफ माय थॉट्स and then how we will have to prepare university faculty and departments for accreditation under the context of national education policy. We will get the guidance from प्रोफेसर के अग्रवाल जी। मैं वंदन करता हूं, आप चेयरमैन है नेशनल बोर्ड एक्रेडिटेशन का, और सर के साथ उनके मार्गदर्शन में एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल में भी काम करने का मौका मिलता है। तो ये जो पूरा नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ रैंकिंग फ्रेमवर्क में जो योगदान है, और अभी तो बहुत सारी उपलब्धियां भारत ने शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में, एक्रेडिटेशन के क्षेत्र में प्राप्त की है। तो ये मेरा सौभाग्य है, विश्वविद्यालय का सौभाग्य है कि आज आपका मार्गदर्शन हमें प्राप्त होने वाला है। There are 2 important terms that we all will have to understand. One is the assessment and the another one is accreditation. And if we just look at some of the highlights of the chapter number 20, which deals with the transforming the regulatory system of higher education, the national education policy has realized that there exists a complete need of a complete absolute overhaul in order to re-energize the higher education sector and enable it to, make it more vibrant in near future. And as we all know, the most basic principle in the regulatory system of higher education will be that the distinct functions of regulation, provision of education, funding, accreditation, and academic standard setting will be performed by distinct, independent, and empowered bodies. We are all now fully aware of the fact that an attempt has been made under the national education policy, that there would be one common regulatory regime for the entire higher education sector, eliminating duplication and the conflict and disjunction of regulatory efforts. We are all fully aware that a single regulator, which is now known as the National Higher Education Regulatory Authority, will be set up in near future to regulate in a light but tight manner, and it would facilitate various important matters, be it finance, governance, disclosure, which would be online and offline, of all procedures, all finances, details about the faculties and staff, academic programs, and the most important one would be educational outcome. Let me take it further, that the most significant highlight of this national education policy is the proposal to set up Higher Education Commission of India, a single umbrella body for the entire higher education, excluding medical education and legal education. And this commission would have 4 independent verticals. The one is the National Higher Education Regulatory Council. The second one is the General Education Council for standard settings. The third would be known as Higher Education Grants Council for funding. And the fourth one would be the National Accreditation Council for accreditation. We will try to focus today on National Accreditation Council and the various issues related with the accreditation. The primary mechanism to enable such regulation will be accreditation, which would focus primarily on basic norms, disclosure, good governance, and as I said, education outcomes. As we all know, it has been named as National Accreditation Authority, NAA, and the license to function as an accreditor shall be awarded to an appropriate number of public institutions by NAA. As we all know, in the long run, accreditation will become a binary process as per the extent of global practice. It's very interesting that we have National Assessment and Accreditation Council, which would take care of, or which would bear the responsibility of national accreditation, national accreditation, as I said, authority in near future. We will have to wait for very number of formal announcement, but as we all know that NEC has gathered a huge amount of data. It has given good quality inputs and has created parameters as a benchmark to assess quality and many more. The number of institutions to be assessed or accredited has only increased with time, as we all know, and NEC can take a parental role in guiding other bodies in near future. NEC will continue to do what it is as it appears as of now, and it has been doing currently, but it will definitely be more decentralized with the new proposal of setting up of these body. As we all know that NEC currently conducts 70% of its assessments online, and NEC peer-to-peer visit takes place for 30% of assessment on-site visit of the institution. And the strategy, as I understand, is to go towards online assessment, make it as less human contact as possible, and making smart use of technology would enable all of us to get everything online, and the accreditation would happen. And let's understand that we are moving towards a blended accreditation assessment, but then there will be more emphasis on online in both. As we all know that National Institute of Ranking Framework is also doing online assessment. None of the ranking systems, like when you talk about Times Higher Education, World University Rankings, or QS World University Rankings, they're not going actually physically to the universities, but then they rank higher education institutions on basis of the data and information which is available in the public domain. And the expectation and the aspiration of the policy is that all private and government institutions should be held accountable and put all the academic data, the relevant one, on the internet. And we really need to put efforts to minimize whatever the anomalies which happens using the technology, and ensuring that the higher education institution should be held responsible for the sharing and dissemination of data and information in the public domain. This is very, very important. I'm very happy to share with all of you that the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, this time it was entrusted the responsibility of preparing a status report, which is known as annual report, which NEC prepares for all the states, and for the government of Gujarat, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda was entrusted responsibility. It's an unpublished report, but it has been accepted and it would be made public very soon. That is the pride, moment for the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. And as we all know, the collective responsibility of each and every one of us is to ensure that we understand, we participate, and we commit to see to it that all educational institutions, all higher education institutions, they get accredited in due course of time. If I share some of the findings which we have to better understand the accreditation status of the state of Gujarat, as of now, the state of Gujarat currently has 20 accredited universities, of which 10 are private universities. 6 are already existing and 4 has been approved. It would start its operations. The state of Gujarat has over 296 5 institutions of higher learning, which imparts education to more than 15,26,000 plus students. And there has been improvement in the primary and secondary education. The higher education scenario, it needs further, augmentation in due course of time. And we are all fully aware of the support that we are getting, the activities, the series of steps that the state of government of Gujarat has taken in order to improve the infrastructure and improve the quality of higher and technical education in the state of Gujarat. There are 82 academic institutions currently functioning in the state of Gujarat. Out of that, 5 institutions, they are of national importance, and 77 universities. And out of 77, there are 25 state universities, 4 agriculture universities, 2 central government universities, 1 deemed universities, and 45 private universities. And if I relate these with the accreditation in the state of Gujarat, 2 central universities which are functioning in the state of Gujarat, they are accredited. Out of 29 state universities, 10 universities have been accredited. That is 34% of the state universities are accredited. 4 agriculture universities and 1 deemed universities, they are yet to get accreditation. And out of 45 private universities, 8 universities have received accreditation. It is nearly 18% of the total number of private universities. So, if we look at the 17 universities of the state government, they are accredited in the pre-revised framework, and we are all fully aware about the revised framework of the NAAC re-accreditation. 3 universities are accredited under the what we call it RAF, Revised Accreditation Framework. Any university of the state of Gujarat is yet to achieve A plus or A double plus. And I think this is the aspiration. The Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, which was when in 2015, when our second cycle came to an end, we were 2.72. In the third cycle, now we are 3.16. And I'm confident with the support that we are getting from the state government of Gujarat and my entire team. Now we are due for re-accreditation in June 2021. The Maharaja Sayajirao, our university, that is the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, would be able to not only retain grade A, but we aspire to get A plus, which I hope we all understand. It is a big challenge because ours is an undergraduate, ours is a university where we offer undergraduate and postgraduate teaching. We are all fully aware of the fact that the university, which was having an average student strength of 36,000, now has reached to 46,000. But then it works as double-edged sword, because around 45 to 50% of our teachers, we appoint them on a contractual basis. But then that is what we have to. But then at the same time, with this structure also, it is a matter of pride for me to share with all of you that the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda is consistently appearing in the 101 to 150 university ranking framework of NIRF for the last 2 years. And from 2016 to 2020, our university, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, has been consistently featuring in the Times World Higher Education Ranking, World University Rankings, Indian University Rankings, and QS Rankings. It's a matter of pleasure for all of us to share that out of 20 universities in the state of Gujarat, 14 universities have been accredited with A grade. That is the 70% of the total number of accredited institutions. And out of 9 state universities, 7 universities have obtained A grade. That is 78%. That in itself speaks of the vibrancy of the state of Gujarat. And when I talk about the colleges, accreditation of the state of colleges. Out of 1,523 colleges in the state of Gujarat, 214 colleges have valid NAC accreditation. It means 14% of the colleges are accredited. The National Education Policy also talks about, and there already, as we are all fully aware of that, the handholding of the academic institutions, especially colleges, for accreditation. It's a big initiative of the Government of India and the Government of Gujarat. I believe that is the responsibility. It is our responsibility. It is the responsibility of the Maharaja Sayajirao of University of Baroda to ensure that we also participate and we also prepare other academic institutions also to go for accreditation. And out of these 214 colleges, 46 have been re-accredited under the revised academic framework. When Professor Agrawal sir is with us, under the National Education Policy, what we should do, that guidance we are going to get. But what I understand, a little understanding that we have for improving our rating in the re-accreditation, what I understand that universities need to focus above all on the outcome-based accreditation that talks about the curriculum design and development. We are fully aware of that each and every academic program that we offer under choice-based credit system, we really need to, in fact, we have already implemented in a big way, but then there is a long way to go. Because at the MS University, we have implemented CBCS at the undergraduate level, but we will have to implement it also at the postgraduate level. And we will have to decide the course objectives. And not only we will have to decide, we will have to go for the mapping of these objectives. At the same time, National Education Policy, because the rules of the game will change in near future, we will have to focus on offering and strengthening the interdisciplinary programs. We have already implemented, but we'll have to again expand what we always discuss is that has been referred as weighted credit transfer for online courses using MOOC and SWAYAM. And very happy to share with you that the Government of Gujarat, as you all are aware of, the state government has already implemented one action plan for 5 years, and all state universities, they are supposed to implement these action plan. We will have to prepare our action plan, and then we will have to map these, we will have to achieve it. And already the exercise is on. So that would also help us, to go for re-accreditation and improve our performance in the re-accreditation. One very important aspect which we have been discussing, and there is a lot of strategic emphasis in the National Education Policy, is that we will have to ensure that we create, cultivate and build research culture. And that will happen through this National Research Foundation. We need to develop centers for promoting strong interdisciplinary research, and we need to establish and improve our teaching learning resources. Faculties would be expected to go very aggressively for developing e-content, automation of library, and one aspect which has been highlighted, which would be critically evaluated even in accreditation, would be mentoring of students. The Government of Gujarat has already implemented the student startup and innovation policy. We also have that policy at our university, and the universities are expected to prepare, as I say, short-term, mid-term and long-term plan, a roadmap which would get augmented in the action plan for the 5 years. NAC accreditation, or accreditation for that matter, is going to become mandatory. When Professor Agrawal ji is here, I would request all my esteemed deans of Faculty of Technology and Engineering, Faculty of Pharmacy, Faculty of Management Studies, and we will have to, already efforts are on, sir. we would be approaching National Board of Accreditation for the accreditation of the various academic programs, which is the need of the hour, that participation. If we want to improve the accreditation and participation in accreditation activities to standardize all our activities and processes and policies, we need vibrant IQAC, which exists very much. As Professor Chakrabarti said, this is the 9th webinar in order to sensitize all stakeholders at the national level for the implementation of national education policy, where the role of accreditation is going to become extremely important. I'm very happy to share with all of you, all attendees who are with us. I would request all of you to join. Even tomorrow we have another webinar on national education policy, which will be organized by Faculty of Journalism. On 22nd, Faculty of Family and Community Sciences planned another webinar looking to their domains. But another important webinar which we are going to have would be on structural changes and the implementation of national education policy, where we are going to get guidance from Professor Aniruddha Deshpande. This webinar is going to take place on 28th of September. I'm very happy to share with all of you that when we shared the details about today's webinar with Honorable Minister of Education, Chudasama Ji, he's busy in another very important set of activities, and we are blessed with the message. Of course, it is in a very local language, a very brief message, but despite of the busy schedule of our very vibrant, agile and accessible Honorable Chief Minister Sri Vijay Rupani Ji, which I hope everybody knows about him, he yesterday late night we received blessings of Sri Vijay Rupani Ji. It is truly motivating event for all of us. The university in the earlier webinars have received blessings and guidance from Honorable Chairman of the UGC, Honorable Vice Chairman of the UGC, Secretary General of AIU, and various other distinguished Vice Chancellors at the national level, including the Chairman of the AICTE. It is a matter of pride for us that today we are going to get the guidance of Agrawal sir. As you all know, our Honorable Chief Minister Sri Vijay Bhai is the 16th Chief Minister of the state of Gujarat, and he has served in various capacities as a member of Rajya Sabha from the Gujarat between 2006 to 2012, was Cabinet Minister for Water Supply, Transport, Labour and Employment, and Chief Minister from 2016, creating a history. He's a very, very popular Chief Minister and approachable, and he's the most important quality which I would like to share with all of you about Sri Vijay Bhai is his sensibility. वो बहुत संवेदनशील है लोगों के लिए, और शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में I believe, I am not sure, but पूरे राष्ट्र में एक ऐसा स्टेट जिन्होंने टैबलेट्स, जब कोई बच्चा कोई भी विद्यार्थी जब विश्वविद्यालय में कदम रखता है प्रथम वर्ष में, तो टैबलेट का जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होता है, और आज हम उसकी जो इम्पोर्टेंस है वो जब ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन में जा रहे हैं वो हम समझ रहे हैं. डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ टैबलेट्स for last several years, which is happening, a wonderful initiative from this government of Gujarat. बहुत बड़ी प्रसन्नता होती है, हम एक ऐसे राज्य में रहते हैं जो स्टार्टअप में पूरे देश में नंबर 1 पे अभी आया है. तो ऐसे जो हमारे जो नेतृत्व हम जिनसे हमें प्राप्त होता है, विजय भाई जी, he is known for his love and affection and passion for taking the education on a newer heights in near future. Once again, I appreciate each one of you for a very patient listening, because today we are going to talk on a very technical aspect of accreditation. And as Dr. Chakrabarti said, we cannot get a wealth of experience. We cannot get there cannot be a better opportunity other than getting guidance and inspiration from Agrawal sir. But before we do that, I would request my technical team to seek the blessings of our Honorable Chief Minister Sri Vijay Bhai Rupani ji by playing a very short video, recorded video which we've received from Honorable CM Sir's office. And then I would request Professor Bhavna Mehta Madam to introduce Professor K.K. Agrawal ji, and we would request Agrawal sir to share his thoughts and inspire all of us to keep on participating and contributing in accreditation activities in the higher education institutions. Over to you, Dr. Arun Anand. And thank you very much to each one of you, and namaskar.
નમસ્કાર. MS યુનિવર્સિટી દ્વારા રાષ્ટ્રીય શિક્ષણ નીતિ 2020 એની ગહન ચર્ચા માટે વેબિનાર સિરીઝના આયોજન કરવા બદલ કુલપતિ શ્રી પરિમલભાઈ વ્યાસ સહિત તમામ આયોજકોને ખૂબ ખૂબ અભિનંદન આપું છું. કોરોનાની આ મહામારીમાં આપણે શિક્ષણના વિકાસ માટે ફિઝિકલી નહીં પણ ડિજિટલી કાર્યક્રમ યોજીને આ વિકાસ યાત્રાને આગળ વધારી રહ્યા છે. કેન્દ્ર સરકાર દ્વારા તાજેતરમાં જાહેર કરેલી નવી રાષ્ટ્રીય શિક્ષણ નીતિ એ અંગે શિક્ષણવિદો સાથે ચર્ચા વિચારણા કરીને વધુ સારી રીતે જમીની સ્તરે વિદ્યાર્થીઓના હિતમાં એનો અમલ કરી શકશું. એટલે આ વેબિનાર સિરીઝમાં સમાજ અને શિક્ષણના પ્રતિનિધિઓ દ્વારા રાષ્ટ્રીય શિક્ષણ નીતિ 2020ની તમામ પરિપ્રેક્ષથી વ્યાપક ચર્ચાઓ કરવામાં આવશે. વડાપ્રધાન શ્રી નરેન્દ્રભાઈ મોદીએ આ રાષ્ટ્રીય શિક્ષણ નીતિ એના દ્વારા ભારતની શિક્ષણ વ્યવસ્થામાં આમૂલ પરિવર્તનનો મહાયજ્ઞ વર્ષો પછી આરંભાયો છે, જેમાં ત્રિભાષા ફોર્મ્યુલા, પ્રકૃતિ સાથે જોડાતા અભ્યાસક્રમો, ટેકનોલોજી યુક્ત શિક્ષણ, સર્વગ્રાહી મૂલ્યાંકન, બહુઆયામી શિક્ષણ, કૌશલ્ય વર્ધનનું મહત્વ અને શ્રમ સાથે જોડાયેલા વ્યવસાયોને વિશેષ ગરિમા જેવી અનેક બાબતો આવરી લઈ એક નૈતિક મૂલ્યનિષ્ઠ, શિષ્ટાચારી, નેતૃત્વશીલ, માનવીય અને સંવૈધાનિક મૂલ્યો ધરાવનાર કે જેમાં કરુણા અને સહાનુભૂતિ જેવા ગુણ હોય એવા ચિંતનશીલ મનુષ્યના નિર્માણનો પાયો નાખ્યો છે, જે રાષ્ટ્રના ઉચ્ચ લક્ષ્યાંક તરફ લઈ જવામાં ચોક્કસ ગતિશીલતા આપશે. ભારત દેશ પરાપૂર્વથી શિક્ષણ અંગે જાગૃતિ અને સમજ ઉચ્ચ કક્ષાએ ધરાવે છે. વર્ષો પહેલા ભારતના શૈક્ષણિક સંકુલો વિશ્વભરમાં જાણીતા હતા, જેમાં તક્ષશિલા, નાલંદા, વિક્રમશિલા, વલ્લભી વગેરે જેવા વિદ્યાપીઠો અને શૈક્ષણિક સંકુલો વિશ્વના ઇતિહાસના પાના ઉપર પણ આજે શોભી રહ્યા છે. હવે ફરી વખત એકવાર ભારત દેશના વૈવિધ્યસભર પ્રાચીન વારસો આ શિક્ષણ નીતિ દ્વારા ઉજાગર થશે. ભાષા એ સંસ્કૃતિની વાહક છે. આ નીતિના અમલથી ભાષાઓ બચશે. આ નવી નીતિમાં ભાર વગરના ભણતરને ધ્યાને રાખી બાળક માટે અક્ષર, ભાષા, સંખ્યા, રંગ, આકાર, ગણતરી, રમતો, તાર્કિક વિચારો, ચિત્રો, શિલ્પ, નાટકો, કઠપુતલી, સંગીત જેવી કલાને મહત્વ આપી બાળકના સર્વગ્રાહી વિકાસ કરવાની દિશામાં આપણે આગળ વધી રહ્યા છીએ. એટલે કે ભારતીય ભાષાઓ, કલાઓ, સંસ્કૃતિનો ત્રિવેણી સંગમ આ નવી રાષ્ટ્રીય શિક્ષણ નીતિમાં જોવા મળશે. આ સાથે આ નીતિમાં વ્યવસાયિક શિક્ષણ અને સંશોધનને પણ મહત્વ આપવા માટે અને સંસ્કૃતિ માટે એક રાષ્ટ્ર શ્રેષ્ઠ રાષ્ટ્ર, એક ભારત શ્રેષ્ઠ ભારત જેવા પ્રોજેક્ટથી અતુલ્ય ભારતનો વારસો જીવંત રાખવા માટે ઓનલાઈન ડિજિટલ શિક્ષણને પ્રોત્સાહિત કરવા માટે આપણે આગળ વધીશું. આગામી દિવસોમાં આ વેબિનારથી ગુજરાતને ચોક્કસ દિશા આપી શકશો. હું આશા રાખું છું કે આ વેબિનાર પૂરી રીતે સર્વગ્રાહી રીતે વિચાર કરીને એક રોડમેપ તમે બનાવી આપશો અને ગુજરાતમાં આપણે ઝડપથી અમલ કરી અને ભવિષ્યનું ગુજરાત, ભવિષ્યની પેઢી એને આપણે શિક્ષિત અને દીક્ષિત કરશું. એ જ અપેક્ષા. સૌનો આભાર. ધન્યવાદ.
Yes.
May I request Professor Bhavna Mehta, please?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Esteemed members present here, it is a pleasure, rather a great honor for me to introduce to you, all of you, one of the very distinguished institution builder of our country, a visionary and a very accomplished academician, Professor K.K. Agrawal ji, who is currently a chairman of National Board of Accreditation, New Delhi. Professor Agrawal is a PhD in engineering from NIT Kurukshetra, wherein he served for 27 years. He has served as a Pro-Vice Chancellor of Guru Jambeshwar University of Science and Technology, Hisar, for 3 years, and later he went on to set up Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University as its founder Vice Chancellor for a long period of 10 years. Professor Agrawal has been a president of the Institution of Electronics and Telecommunications for the period of 3 years, president of Computer Society of India, again for a period of 3 years, and president of Southeast Asia Regional Computer Confederations, again for a period of 3 years. He has published more than 400 papers in the reputed journals. He has been widely consulted by the industry, most notable being his contribution towards the reliability analysis for Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Professor Agrawal was conferred the honorary fellowship by Broadcast Society of India. He was decorated with Lifetime Achievement Award by Institute of Engineering and Telecommunications and also by Computer Society of India. Professor Agrawal has been associated with National Board of Accreditation in various capacities since its inception. First, he was the chairperson of its Electronic Accreditation and Electronic and Engineering Accreditation Committee before he took over in his current role as its chairperson from 14 January 2019. It's really an honor to have you, sir, with us and have your guidance in our university's march towards accreditation and implementation of new education policy. We really welcome you and we are looking forward to listening to you. Over to you, sir, Professor K.K. Agrawal.
Namaskar, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavna, for a nice introduction. Well, friends, I know about MS University in some measure, and therefore when Professor Parimal Vyas just invited me to be a part of your webinar series, it was my pleasure to accept the same, and I'm too happy to be with you this morning talking about accreditation in particular and maybe the national policy in general to some extent, sharing my some thoughts with a very enlightened faculty of this university. I'm so happy that you are conducting this webinar series and inviting so many people who have either already contributed to the formulation of this policy or will be contributing in its implementation for next 10 to 15 years very solidly. I'm particularly happy that you will be having Anirudh Deshpande ji in a week's time to talk to you on structural changes. We had several meetings with him also, and I being also a part of it, where we discussed the draft of this policy quite some detail as to how can we go further. Because as you are aware, this was a policy which has been so-called being prepared for last 4 years plus, and the discussions which were going on were too many, with too many stakeholders, with only one aim, that let us try to be as close to reality as possible, number one. Number two, as close to the USP of this country. See, our policies, education policy, if you have to talk, Professor Parimal Vyas was very right. When you say आत्मनिर्भर भारत की ओर, आत्मनिर्भर भारत की ओर बिना शिक्षा के नहीं बढ़ा जा सकता, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है. और यदि वो शिक्षा अपनी संस्कृति के अनुकूल नहीं होगी तो उस शिक्षा का महत्व बहुत कम हो जाता है. तो टू कीप दिस इन व्यू, देयर वर वेरी वेरी longish discussions on the policy, and finally I think the draft which was finally emerged was 484 pages, and it was thought that a policy cannot be so long, so a bridged version of the draft was prepared, making several changes in the process and again several discussions, and we came up with the national education policy, which was announced just about 2 months ago. It's a landmark policy for the history of this country, not only the domain of education, but in everything. Friends, as I told you, I have a fair idea about this university, like several good universities in the country. And I first of all congratulate Professor Vyas and all of you, the senior faculty members here, to take this university to the level where it has already reached. And I fully synergize your aspirations and wish you all the best to achieve those in the shortest possible time in the near future. I'll come to the specific purposes of the university and specific points a little later. When Professor Parimal Vyas was making his observations, I noticed on his desk, one side was Goddess Saraswati and other side was Swami Vivekananda. And if Ma Saraswati keeps on guiding us forever, and Vivekananda's ideals on education become the implementable principles of any policy, I don't think we can be left behind. And so nicely he had placed the policy by the side of the statues to always remind him that policy has to be implemented, but keeping in view Ma Saraswati and keeping in view Swami Vivekananda ji. And I have always believed these things are not designed. They don't happen by coincidence. They happen by God's will. And that's a guiding force which always comes into picture. So I was so happy to see that picture. It is embodied in my mind. And I'm sure these guiding lights will take us to where we wish to go. Friends, as Professor Vyas did tell that this national education policy goes to 4 very distinct verticals: regulation, accreditation, grants, and standard setting. It was a very deliberate attempt to keep these 4 verticals independent of each other to a reasonable extent, except the coordinating super body, because at the moment, say for example, technical education, AICT approves you, AICT approves your grants, and AICT sets the standards. For other courses and the universities in general, UGC approves you, UGC sets the standards, and UGC regulates you. And in a way, NAC, which is a subsidiary form of organ of UGC, accredits you. NBA is a little more independent and autonomous of AICTE. We had to do that for Washington Accord, that I'll come to. But the point which I'm trying to mention is that so far, these verticals were overlapping with each other with the same body. And with the result that independence of these functions was jeopardized in some form or the other. And therefore, it was very strongly believed, let these 4 functions be completely independent so that the universities have a fair deal for every situation. So therefore, these 4 verticals, I think, will be a very strong decision of this policy, which will go a long way. Talking about accreditation, which is the agenda of the day. Friends, accreditation, at the moment, the country has only 2 bodies, NAC and NBA. NAC accredits the university or the institution as a whole, and NBA accredits only technical programs, engineering, management, pharmacy, architecture, etc. And our accreditation of NBA is program wise, not on the basis of institution, because like everywhere else in the world, it's a distinct reality that one program may be conducted very well in a university and the other program in the same university may not be conducted very well. It depends on so many factors that you know. And therefore, program-wise accreditation became the norm of NBA right from beginning, and we are continuing with that. And this is in consonance with the direction all over the world that it should be program-wise accreditation for everything. Now, all the more so now when the attempt is to make every university as multidisciplinary university. It's quite a possibility that a university may be excellent in medical sciences, but it may not be so good in arts and humanities. On the other hand, there may be universities which are excellent in folk music, in dances, in languages, but may not be that well in engineering. Because most of the institutions are now bound to be multidisciplinary, I believe in future a program-wise accreditation might have to take over, because accrediting the universities as a whole when everything is going to become multidisciplinary. For example, our IITs now, in engineering education, they are the supreme. They have done us proud. And when I looked at the ranking every year, even this year, out of the first 10 slots, 7 go to IITs. Now, is that a very right picture for the country as a whole is a question mark. IITs have done us proud. I myself am an engineer. We are proud of their achievements. But for a country of this diversity, the universities are lagging behind in ranking. I think we have to look within. Either ranking mechanism might have to change, or the universities have to really come up to the levels of excellence which is required. And even there I was seeing, if I compare the score of IISc, which is at number 1, and the universities which are at number 2 and 3, there's a huge gap. I mean, I have written even an article. I am not appreciative of the huge gap. I have never seen an Olympic where the first position and the second position differ by 25%. Well, that's not an Olympic if it happens. So therefore, we have to make sure that there is a tough competition to run the race for securing the first position. Unless that happens, we are not achieving out of ranking what we should achieve. And therefore, I really see this policy as a great foundation for building up interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity as cultures. I use the word cultures intentionally, not only as education programs, because single discipline institutions, howsoever excellent they may be, they may not be able to solve the nation's problems. They may give us excellence in engineering. They may give us excellence in medical science. They may give excellence in law. But are they able to solve the problems of the country is a question which had become a very open question, which had become a very realistic question. And therefore, I believe interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity are the very strong hallmarks of this university, and that will affect accreditation also in the years to come. Friends, Professor Parimal Vyas did talk about the centralized accreditation authority or accreditation council, whatever it is called. The reason and the genesis for this is, at the moment we have only 2 accreditation bodies, NAC and NBA, and you are familiar with both. You have gone through the exercise of both, and you have achieved reasonably well in both, although I hope and wish you improve in both very soon. Having said that, it is believed that these 2 bodies may not be able to take up the entire accreditation load of a country of this size, of diversity of this. For example, I'm not saying that, but there may be a need for establishing a specific accreditation body for medical education. There may be a need for specific accreditation body for agriculture education. Many universities which run medical sciences have also told me, they say, sir, how can we have PhDs in medical education? There are not many PhDs in medical science. And when the total number of PhDs in the university are compared, then we get a disadvantage. So, but that's a reality which has to be faced with. So if we go to realities of discipline to discipline, subject to subject, faculty to faculty, we do find that there would be a need for specialized accreditation bodies for programs, and therefore it was felt if ultimately the country might have to have, say, 10 accreditation agencies or 15 accreditation agencies, then there must be an overarching council for accreditation which decides the norms to be followed, the economic models, so on and so forth, so that there is no sort of a visible conflict or not so much a variation of standards. As a matter of fact, the draft education policy even had a built-in provision. If your cycle 1 accreditation is by agency A, cycle 2 accreditation should be by agency B, so that it's not agency-driven accreditation, it is really quality-driven accreditation. So accreditation will become more and more quality conscious, because education without quality really has no meaning, particularly higher education. When it comes to literacy, yes, it's a different kind of quality required in school education. But when it comes to higher education, models of quality have to be very, very rigorous, very, very different, because country invests a lot in higher education. Doesn't matter it's a private university or the public university. It's a country's investment in some form or the other. So therefore, quality results have to come in. When I talk about quality to come in, talk about accreditation for a few minutes. At the moment, if I take the total scenario, less than 20% institutions are accredited, whether it's NAAC or NBA. As a matter of fact, NBA, we have not been able to accredit even more than 15% programs in the country. Incidentally, it's not because of the workload, it's because the programs have not come themselves up to the level of accreditation. There is no backlog of pending cases, and our success rate for applicants is plus 80%. So it's not that there's a lot of rejection, but it is a stark reality of life that people have not reached the level of accreditation which is expected of them, and therefore they do not even apply. So we took some steps to encourage the people to start applying at least. Before I took over, it was that for the first program to be accredited, you have to pay a fees of 5 lakhs and then 2 lakhs per program and so on and so on. So many institutions which were okay with one program were feeling, let us have 1 or 2 more programs so that the fee is rationalized. So encourage them. I said, okay, it will be 2 lakhs per program irrespective of the number of programs. So even if you are confident of one program, come along. Let's give you encouragement for going in for accreditation. So we did that. And looking to the ground realities, just announcing a few decisions. You know that we are a member of the Washington Accord, National Board of Accreditation. And we went to Washington Accord for achieving the mobility of our engineers. At the moment, that time Washington Accord was 14 countries. Now it is 20 countries. And the meaning of Washington Accord is that if an engineering graduate from an accredited institution in India wishes to practice in any of the other 19 countries, he or she is allowed to practice without any hassles. So to increase the universal international mobility of engineering professionals, we had to go in to become a member of the Washington Accord. It's a very tough thing to do. You firstly have to become a provisional member, then you're tested like anything, and that testing is much more rigorous than the accreditation exercises you go through. Then they accredit us. In 2014, we got 6 years accreditation and became a permanent signatory to Washington Accord. And last year we were reviewed, and 2020 the final meeting in Washington Accord took place, and I'm so happy to announce here that we have got extension for another 6 years to continue on the Washington Accord permanent membership status. Why I'm trying to tell you this is an important factor is that to be voted to continue, you need 70% of the member countries to study your processes and tell you that you are following the right processes. Therefore, we agree for you to be granting extension. I'm so happy to announce India is the country and maybe one of the few countries where all the 100% countries in the world said that they deserve extension. Their process is most robust, most rigorous. So instead of 70% votes, we got all 100% votes for extension of Washington Accord just a couple of months ago. And this is because we get so much cooperation from all the universities, all the institutions. And go ahead. Professor Vyas did raise about the question of contractual faculties. Well, friends, I think we have to gradually come out of certain mindsets. If the faculty is very well qualified, as far as accreditation or delivery of education is concerned, does it make a difference to us whether he is regular or he is contractual? We thought no, and therefore in the National Board of Accreditation, we have taken a decision that whether you are regular, whether you are contractual, we don't care. There are only 2-3 conditions. Number one, you must meet the qualifications required for the post. There should be no dilution of qualifications. Number two, you must be through some selection process, whatever the institution or the university decides. And number three, you must be teaching at least for 2 semesters continuously, not that you come for a month or so. So with these 3 conditions, we have stopped distinguishing between regular faculty and contractual faculty, because there could be some plus points also with contractual faculties as we go along. In many institutions, we find that some of the for example, under TechCube, the contractual faculties which have been selected for TechCube institutions is far better than many of those institutions could have selected themselves. So therefore, gradually the accreditation processes itself will have to become dynamic. And when I say dynamic, I mean a few things. Number one, I personally believe there is no formal decision taken on this, that accreditation will have to become program-wise gradually, because all the departments in any university cannot be equally good. That's a way of life. That's a reality of life. And even all siblings in a family are not equally good. So to expect all schools, all faculties, all departments in a university should be good for accreditation will be probably too much of asking when we want everyone to become interdisciplinary. Number one. Number two, we are outcome-based education in NBA, and we had to go to outcome-based education, let me frankly admit, because of the Washington Accord. Washington Accord said that no matter what you teach, every engineer coming out of your accredited program must have these 12 attributes. So they defined 12 graduate attributes, which we call, which an engineer must possess to be called an engineer. And they said how you achieve it is your concern, but a graduate engineer must have a knowledge base for engineering, must be good in problem analysis, must be good in doing investigations, must be good in design, must be good in teamwork, must be good in communication skills, so on and so forth. So 12 graduate attributes were listed by Washington Accord, and India adopted all these 12 as it is. So therefore, when we expect these things to have happened, outcome-based education came into being, and it is now a well-accepted reality of life in the world over. Even NAC has now gone to outcome-based education in a reasonable depth when they have started talking in terms of learning outcomes and things like that. Even school education is now going to define learning outcomes and going towards outcome-based education. The philosophy of outcome-based education is very simple. Earlier, the belief is a group of professors will sit on a table in the conference room and will decide what should a student study, and believe and hope that after a student passes all these courses, he will become a good engineer or a good manager or a good doctor or a good lawyer and so on and so forth. And nobody really bothered to find out from the student as to what do you want to become a good engineer, or what do you want to become a good lawyer. Outcome-based education says, no, go the other way around. First of all, list what do you expect an engineer to be? What do you expect a scientist to be? For that matter, what do you expect an artist to be? And list that first, and then go down to decide that to achieve these graduate attributes, what should be studied, what should be taught. And therefore, outcome-based education is much more closer to the realities of life, which we have to concede and accept. I always say, all of us know that a house is made up of bricks, sand, cement, and if I call a contractor that I want to build my house on a 200 square meters plot, 3-story, what do you want? He will make a rough estimate and tell me so many thousand bricks, so many bags of cement, so many this. But if I put those bags of cement, those bags of sand, so many bricks, does it become a house? No. House requires bricks, sand, cement, everything, but a heap of bricks, heap of sand, heap of cement does not make a house. To make a house, you require a planning, where to put what, how to put what, and then only it becomes a house, and more so a good house if you wish to. So therefore, outcome-based education is you keep in mind what you wish to become and then design downwards. That is the philosophy with which we'll have to function, and I believe it's a very right philosophy. And I put it in only one sentence, that whenever you teach a class 1 hour, after that 1 hour, you need not tell me, you need not tell the vice chancellor, you need not tell the head of the department. You must tell yourself, why did I spend 60 student hours? What do I expect the student to have learned at the end of this 1 hour, which will, not from the examination point of view, which will connect that to one of the graduate attributes which I have already listed. Every 1 hour of class must be able to give you a flow chart which connects you to one of the graduate attributes which you wanted to imbibe to the student, and therefore you took this 1 hour. Otherwise, I'm sorry to use little harsh words, otherwise you have wasted the time of the students with no authority, or using your authority beyond limits. Similarly, when you set a question paper, even if a question carries 2 marks, you have to answer yourself, when I am asking the student to answer this question, which graduate attribute I am trying to test? Because if the question is not connecting to any of the graduate attribute, then is the academic exercise becoming a game playing, that I will teach whatever I wish to teach, I will set the question paper accordingly, and if the students do well what I wanted them to do, I will give them A+, they will go into the market with 9.7 CGPA, and industry will find they're useless. Now that's the phenomena with which we ended up with, right from school education to higher education. We have CBSE students with 100% marks or 99% so many, and then they fail in JEE. What does it mean? And similarly, if you get a university topper is not selected by an industry, what does it mean? So somewhere outcomes are not being considered seriously. That's our problem. And outcomes is not a very new thing in the history. If you look at your art, because your university, I was seeing even in the university song, I could see some interdisciplinary frames even in one song. I could see several disciplines being reflected. Now that's the kind of look to the some standards. Say for example, martial arts. Who decides you will get an orange belt, you will get a green belt, you will get a red belt now? There are standards laid down. And then whether you get, it is your choice to decide, well, now I am fit enough to go in for green belt testing. You go in, if you qualify, you get it. Otherwise, you wait for a few months, and whenever you feel comfortable, you again go in. So accreditations, I think we'll have to define gradually many levels of accreditation to expect same outcomes from everybody probably is a bit of a anomaly. It's very difficult to kill that anomaly. How far I will succeed and all of you will help me to succeed or help us to succeed is a question mark. But I give a very crude example, but very meaningful example. They say, supposing we say every animal should know how to swim. Looks like a good aim. Every animal should know how to climb the tree. Seems like a good aim. Monkey appears for accreditation. He is able to climb up the tree. Fine. Says you swim the canal. He says I can't swim the canal. He says you say no, then you cannot get accreditation because you fail in one criteria. Fish appears. Fish says I can swim. Say okay, climb up the tree. Fish says I can't climb up the tree. You say okay, then you cannot get accreditation. Now is that the outcome-based education? Outcome-based education will be, if a monkey can climb 100 feet today, let me ask the monkey, please do more practice and in the next cycle climb 120 feet. That is accreditation. If a fish is able to swim 100 meters today, I said in the next cycle, I expect you to swim 120 meters. That is accreditation. So we will have to identify the strengths of each program and set higher and higher standards for those strengths. If we go on weaknesses, we'll never subject to certain minimum norms. I think strengths will have to be identified, strengths will have to be amplified, and strengths will have to be taken forward. And Professor Vyas rightly said, all over the world, we are now thinking of binary accreditation. You are either accredited or not accredited. This 3.16, 3.27 will go. I mean, we will probably have to devise other methods for gradual autonomy or so on and so forth. But accreditation, the most basic book for accreditation, the first book on accreditation, you will be surprised to know, was written by a sociology school teacher. It was not a higher education, it was not engineering, it was management, not management. It was a sociology teacher of school who wrote the outcome-based education. And he said there are two basic things to see. Number one, you must be able to list what do I expect at the end of this education. You should be able to list that, number one. And number two, when you go in for accreditation, you should only be able to write whether these points have been achieved or not, yes or no. That's the end of it. So that's what we do in NCC, whether you are B level or C level or A level. We do it in judo karate. We know that in martial arts, but we don't do that when it comes to normal education. We probably will have to do the standard setting level wise and then go further. Another thing, friends, I would like to say, accreditation will also always have to be a dynamic exercise. Well, people tell me many times, sir, 3 years before we got accreditation, 6 years before we accreditation, and this time we are not making it. How come? I said, because you never improved in these 6 years. And they say, sir, but we never went back. I said, that's the problem. In an educational institution, if you don't go backwards, please do not feel you are good enough. Unless you improve every day, you are going backwards, because no living organism, you talk of an insect, you talk of an animal, you talk of a human being, you talk of a plant, every living organism is either growing or decaying. Nothing is static. Only non-living beings are static. Only your table remains of the same length all 20 years. your child will never remain the same height. You will never remain the same. And so all living organisms have to change. And I very strongly believe universities are living organisms. So unless you change, unless you improve, you are going bad. So don't go into the self-deception mode that we are as we were. That's a negative trait. So we will have to go in for continuous improvement all the time. And that, I think, is a very strong metric of every accreditation exercise. And I, for one, am thinking again, I don't know how far I'll be able to carry the board of academicians and so on and so forth, that when we grant accreditation first time, we should be able to give you a sheet of paper that in the next cycle, we expect the following. Just as in MNCs, when they give you an ACR, the boss sits with you to write your ACR and then tells you, okay, next year targets are these. So in the next cycle, what are your targets we should be able to define? I mean, I find many colleges, because we give accreditation at 600 marks for tier 2 institutions, and many colleges are very happy to stay at 620, 630. They don't want to go further because their whole aim is to write on the board that we are accredited. They don't want to improve further. And I believe if you get 620 first time, 620 after 3 years, 615 after 6 years, and we continue to give you accreditation, is it a right thing to do? That way, if somebody had 675 and now comes to 625, he also gets accreditation. So, although he has gone bad. So probably we'll have to build in continuous improvement very strongly in the process of accreditation as we sit back and design the complete regulations for accreditations. Friends, I'm always reminded of the most beautiful classic Alice in the Wonderland. And the very sentence there is, you will have to run very fast to remain where you are. You will have to run very fast to remain where you are. I think that's the word of education we are in. We'll have to run very fast to remain we are. If we don't run, then obviously we are not. So universities will have to, it's a great challenge which is coming in. We'll have to follow that challenge. And lastly, friends, because now everything is going to become multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary, I think university like MS University has a potential to come up on the scenario much better, because many of our existing top institutions are single discipline institutions. And for them to become multidisciplinary and then excel in all disciplines will be a greater challenge than for you to excel in several disciplines at the same time. I find with whatever little glimpse I had and whatever I had read about you, seen about you, that you are a real multidisciplinary university in the traditional sense, in the modern sense, in the every sense of the word. And therefore, to prove yourself, to improve yourself in the world of multidisciplinarity probably would be little easier for you than for others to become multidisciplinary first and then improve. That is my suggestion, my take to you, my best wishes to you. And also, friends, I know some of the senior faculties here. You are very rich in faculty. And a university like this, which has a great history, which is rich in faculties, I think many of the principles enshrined in National Policy of Education, you can start implementing it from tomorrow. You really don't need any legislation, more legislations to take you forward. For example, if you want to start a 4-year program, now you can. Now, if you want to ask a science student, well, if you want to take a course in music, we'll allow you to. If you ask an engineering student, well, if you want to take some courses in law, yes, we'll permit you to. Please go ahead and start doing that, and you have the potential and possibility of becoming a leader in the world of implementation, because you have strengths in several disciplines and many good faculties on interdisciplinarity. And world today is demanding interdisciplinarity in a real sense of the word. A single discipline education, howsoever good it may be, it may serve you as a good researcher, but to be a good solver of real life problems is a difficult question to ask. I always give an example I can repeat. Somebody appeared wrote a PhD thesis on botany. He did research for 4 years on the leaf of a tree, studied too much about the leaves. What is the shapes of the leaves, sizes of the leaves, histograms, bar charts, pie charts, how many veins on the average the tree has, leaf has, and so on, color structure, texture, thickness, everything. A good thesis, good publications. Ultimately, as you know, Viva was held. Viva was also held very good. And the examiner, the external examiner said, good, my dear student, you deserve a PhD. So we are happy to congratulate you. He said, okay, by the way, before I leave, which leaf this tree belongs to, which tree is the tree from where you have studied this leaf? And the student could not answer. Now, if our research takes us to those kinds of specializations where we forget about the root from where we have started, will that kind of specialization solve the problems of the country? And will such an accredited institution will really make a difference to the world? Is a question which we'll have to ask, we'll have to answer, we'll have to go on this. And therefore, friends, make multidisciplinarity a culture straight away. You don't need any state government, center government, UGC regulation to do that. Do on a limited extent and start and creditize everything. The other day I was addressing a group of 8,000 industrialists on $5 trillion economy, and I said, as you learn to monetize everything in the industry, we in the universities will have to learn to creditize everything in the universities. I went as a chairman of a committee to approve a deemed university in the country long back, 25 years or 30 years ago. The university is good. Now it is amongst the national top ranking universities, private universities. And the university also had some schools in the management, as many of the private people have. And the vice chancellor very proudly told me, sir, our students are so good that they have networked the complete school. Computer networking they have done by themselves, without asking any computer firm to do that. I said, very good. Compliments and congratulations. And then I just smiled. Said, sir, what, sir? I said, but you as a university, deemed university has all the powers. But you as a deemed university will still ask these 6 students to pass in the theory paper of computer networking. Otherwise, we will not give you the degree. That's the problem. Deemed universities have the powers. You all came into existence to be autonomous, away from the state universities' tight regulations. And I can almost dare you will not give them a degree till they pass the paper in networking, although they have done the networking in the school. Now that's the mindset which will have to change. I have some very unusual habits. When I used to go to the visiting committees, a group of students were working in the veranda and doing some robotics exhibition preparation. I said, you love to work in the laboratory or in the veranda? And all of them said in the veranda, sir. Now my point is, working in the veranda, why can't I give them credit and marks if that satisfies them more and if they come up with a product? So if somebody does a project at home and brings to me, sir, I did it, what mistake he or she has done? He says, no, you have not done in the class. You might have copied. Pardon me saying, are we able to check all copying now? So I think some error of judgment somewhere, but let's err on type 2 error, as I call it. Let's start believing the student more, believing myself little less, believing the student little more. That will bring in the change in the quality, and quality is accreditation. And I have seen all over this happening. And whenever we have believed the students, whenever we have given them more freedom. They have come up with excellent ideas, excellent things. Whenever we have forced them to stick to the book, they have passed the exams, but they have not delivered. I have asked this question many times. Before independence, we could produce 2 Nobel laureates in this country, Professor C.V. Raman in science and Dr. Tagore from literature. And Dr. Tagore wrote Gitanjali under a tree, and Professor C.V. Raman worked in a lab whose total equipment was 250 rupees. So out of using an equipment of 250 rupees, he got a Nobel Prize. And today, in 75 years, close, we have increased the infrastructure like anything. Maybe 10 raised to power 7 times, 8 times, 10 times, I don't know. But we have not been able to bring in any Nobel laureate. Only when somebody gets the prize, we start tracing back the where was he born, where was his mother born, where was his father born, and start taking pride in that. But why not a single Nobel laureate? Reason is simple. We have made our education system too rigid, too tight, too inflexible, right from school. And I was reading the other day an article. He says a child of 3, if he has a creativity X, then a child of 16 in this country has a creativity X by 10. Now it is all of us who have reduced the creativity to 10%. Are we all not committing a crime in the whole process? What right we have got to suppress the creativity which has been gifted by the God to the child? So I think our school system, our higher education system has to bring in that creativity and enliven the system. Then only quality will really have a meaning. Then only accreditation will really have a meaning, because quality outcome has to be defined first. Stanford told me, sir, we don't measure our immediate placements. We try to keep a track where our students are 20 years after graduation. That is our measurement of performance. Was our student able to rise? Was he or she able to make his or her way herself or himself? And so after 20 years, where our graduates are, we measure ourselves by that. So that is outcome. We may not be able to do all that right now, but to a good university like you, I will keep on giving this signal. Let's implement it after 10 years, I don't care. But real outcomes are these. Another very good university, top ranking university in the world. I said, how, in one sentence, how do you measure your outcome? He says, sir, we always, at the convocation, we try to invite the best personality in the country to talk to our graduates. We look forward to a situation that in 20 years, can we feel proud in inviting one of our graduates to address our convocation? That's our measure of success. Do we ourselves feel so confident that our graduate in 20 years has risen to a level that we can invite him to address our convocation? If yes, then we are successful. Otherwise, we have failed. So I think these are the real outcomes, which will take time for us to define and this, but let's move in that direction. And I thank you once again to give me an opportunity to talk to an enlightened faculty in a very good university like this. I wish you all the best and assure you, I am there with you in whatever little I can, in whatever manner I can, not as chairman MBA, but as a professor in the country for whatever help I can, because I expect and wish and pray that some real multidisciplinary universities now, after the announcement of this policy, have to come up very fast in the new changed world of multidisciplinarity and give quality metrics for that. And I see that a reality, and that is why I am saying that all that repeatedly. Accreditation is a very small part of the game, which you will play and succeed. But I am looking forward to much better outcomes, much higher outcomes. That will be the real quality of education. With these words, I thank Professor Vyas, and I will like to compliment him for taking the university on a very good path. I hope all of you will continue to work in the same spirit or still higher spirit to go further. And my best wishes and thanks once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I say that, sir, the last few minutes are going to remain with us for quite some time, or maybe for the lifetime. In fact, they were inspiring, indeed very inspiring, sir. Apart from the procedural aspects, it had the philosophical and ethical basis also. There are quite a few questions, but before going to that, may I compliment you, sir, because you have been a part of NBA from the very beginning. May I compliment you on behalf of the entire nation for having been the part of Washington Accord,
Yes.
which is a very important accomplishment, sir. Please accept our compliments and our appreciation.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Sir, there are a very few questions. One major question that I extract from all these questions is that how is the accreditation process going to change with this new education policy? That is the question.
Okay. Well, I think a change will be, as I said earlier also, accreditation is a dynamic process and it will continue to change. And the new education national policy will again bring in a change. For example, we will have to bring in the graduate attributes, maybe a multidisciplinarity angle, which was so far not so explicit. Even in the last meeting of Washington Accord, because these discussions are going on the world over, we are trying to see, should sustainability development goals be a part of graduate attributes? Because in 2015, India adopted sustainability development goals, and I'm sorry to say, but no country in the world has really done enough to meet sustainability development goals. I'm sure all of you are familiar with one of the sustainability goals is no poverty, other is no illiteracy, other is good medical facilities. Well, I say in lighter vein, if the health would have been good for everybody, COVID would not have impacted anybody. And if COVID would have impacted, and if our education systems would have been strong, then again, learning online education should not be required. It should have been, we should have been strong enough. So my point is, sustainability development goals might become a part of it. Creativity and innovation will become part of graduate attributes gradually. As to how do we measure it? So some of these desirable, see, what is accreditation? We want to measure what is expected of you, and the policy has defined what is expected of you, and therefore based on those expectations there would be changes, but there will be no sort of immediate radical changes as some people feel, because this policy is not uprooting anything. It's only changing. For example, if you have a 4-year degree, you give a certificate at the end of 1 year, diploma at the end of 2 years. We don't need to change anything. See, and these are facilities required. So I don't expect many changes immediately, but over a period of time, yes, changes will be required, and multidisciplinarity will have to come in the entire definition.
Thank you, sir. Other questions or comments, but sir, this is a question from my side.
Sure.
Today's Times of India carries the article by Gurucharan Das.
By
Gurucharan Das.
Gurucharan Das.
Yeah.
And he has brought in the role of teacher at the center of national education policy. Sir, I would request you to kindly give your
well, Dr. Chakravarti, I mean, I think no person in academics, not only me, I think all of you also, would agree. Ultimately, it is the teacher only who is in the heart of education. Buildings are required, equipments are needed, but they do not need the education. Education is really made right from school up to the university by teachers. Do all of us not remember some school teachers? And who are those? Those are the people you will analyze in yourself, that they were teachers and role models. They were the teachers. I always say, if a teacher can inspire this confidence in the student that, well, my dear, I am for you. Your welfare is my concern. Then teaching is done. Mathematical formula, so he can learn from internet also now, from books also now. But putting the things together is the teacher. and teacher will be at the heart of the every policy implementation, and all the more so when we are trying to see, this is a policy which itself is a good example of outcome-based education, because we listed first what do we expect of a citizen, Gandhiji's 5 principles, and so we expected what do we want from a citizen, and then work backwards. So it's a case study for outcome-based education in that sense, and therefore without teacher, well, teachers will have to be role models, and I'll just give again a small example of school education. Wipro, as you know, is a very good computer organization. They did this study about 15 years ago on best schools of Delhi and Bombay, best schools. And they asked the students, what is the chemical formula of steam? I mean, many of you are science background, but others also have studied science up to 10th at least. What is the chemical formula of steam? And no student practically answered this. The reason is very simple, because no book has written this, no teacher has spoken this. Then they felt disturbed. They collected about 100 teachers in an auditorium and started discussing. They said, okay, what is the chemical formula of water? Well, everybody said H2O. What nonsense? Is it a question? We are so bright students and you are asking us chemical formula of water. Then they were asked, when water boils, what happens? I said, what a foolish thing to ask, steam. Then they said, is boiling a physical phenomena or a chemical phenomena? Everybody said physical phenomena. Then they said, do the chemical properties change during a physical process? Everybody said no. Now, every student knows water is H2O. When it boils, it forms steam. Boiling is a physical process. Chemical composition does not change during a physical process. All these 4 sentences are memorized by every student, and still nobody is able to tell the formula of steam. That is where teacher will have to come in. That is where teacher will have to put pieces together. The role of teacher will not go away by books. The role of teacher will not go away by internet. The role of teacher will not go away by online education. Role of teacher will only go away when we decide consciously to make ourselves irrelevant. I'm making a strong statement, but challenge is all the more greater now to keep ourselves relevant, because national education policy is empowering a student. If it doesn't like a course of yours, he has a power to go to the other university. Sir, mathematics I am not liking you to teach, so I'm taking it from another university, and you will have to give me credit for this. So if that age is going to come, I think teacher has to become still more important. So it's not defined here, but I see a great role and great transformation in the teaching profession to come. And I wish it comes soon, comes in a very decent manner. That's my pray and hope. Thank you.
Sir, to go to the last question now, this is out of curiosity from my side. Allow me the audacity to put it, sir. While going through your introduction, I came across a term called reality analysis for polar satellite launch vehicle. So I would like to know a bit more about it. What is that?
It's not reality analysis, it's reliability analysis.
Okay.
What we try is, see, when you have a very complex system, we want to see what will be the probability of success, that is reliability. And say, for example, a TV. When we have to talk about reliability of a TV, it's easy to test. I will take 100 TVs, test them to measure reliability. Even in the process, 5 are destroyed, nothing happens, right? But when I come to space systems like missiles, if I test a missile, it is gone. So how do I measure the reliability of a missile? How do I measure the reliability of a launch vehicle? Because if I try to test it, it is gone. So therefore, we have to do mathematical modeling to try and assure to us when I will fire it, it will have a high degree of probability of success. So that we do by mathematical modeling and all that. So that's what I did.
Right, sir. Thank you. So that was the last question. And I'm sure there are many things that have been taken home today. And personally, for me, being a director of the IQAC, I think the best sentence that I would carry home is that please keep running to be there where you want to be. So thank you so much. I would now request our registrar, Dr. K.M. Chudasma, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
I am Dr. K.M. Chudasma, the Registrar of the University. On my personal behalf, on behalf of Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, of Maharaja Sayajirao University, the Senate, Syndicate, staff and students of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, I wholeheartedly thank you for providing us such an enlightening inputs. I was listening to your entire session and felt like a student, because this was something wherein we are getting the ready-made material from the experience of an institution itself. So Professor K.K. Agarwal, Chairman, NBA, he himself is a institution, and we are indeed blessed and obliged to have him here for the inputs. Your few of the points have been really very inspiring when you appreciated that Maharaja Sayajirao University has 111 departments, and there is a scope of multidisciplinarity. And when NBA looks at us with the hopes of the possibility that we can explore the multidisciplinary implementation, sir, we are now energized by your inputs. We are energized by your expectations also. And from today, now our goal is going to change, as rightly mentioned by our Vice Chancellor, sir, that we have to be the first one to take a step ahead regarding this thing. And your inputs, in fact, your dose has enabled us to take the very first step. And probably I am sure that in a short while, our Vice Chancellor, sir, would come up with a meeting also regarding the implementation of this policy. Sir, we are very thankful to you for sparing your valuable time, being with us and guiding us so thoroughly that how can we approach, and not only guiding, you motivate a lot. We really wish that if this corona would not have been there, we would like to have you physically here. You stay with us for some time, and probably we can have a blueprint of what MSU can do in coming next few days. Sir, we are very blessed and pleased to have you with us. Thank you so much for sparing your time. We are in fact very much obliged and glad to witness the virtual presence of our Honorable Chief Minister, Sir, Shri Vijay Rupani ji. He has been a person, so serene person with a substance, and he is very keen about the implementation of national education policy. In fact, we are very obliged that he specially spared time for Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda and accepted our invitation. And due to his busy schedule, he could not remain here with us, but he made it a point, with putting all the efforts, that he sent his recording to us, being with us virtually, and that has motivated us. Thank you so much. Be a chief minister of this cadre. When he supports us, he motivates us, we would definitely jump ahead in implementation of the policy. And we are very sure that Maharaja Sayajirao University would step ahead in terms of implementation of national education policy at the earliest, sir. I thank the IQAC team, Dr. B.S. Chakravarti sir and his entire team, and Professor Bhavna Mehta for being with us and coordinating the entire event. There are many participants I can see here, and not only here but also on Facebook. So this was really indeed a fruitful session, and we would expect your inputs time and again, sir. Thank you so much from Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar,
Thank
sir.
you, everybody.
Namaskar.
बहुत धन्यवाद सर, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
It was a pleasure.